If, like me, you are of a certain age with a little bit of snow on the roof and the lawn, then when you think of this, you probably think of this.
MG is now one of the many quality British Leyland vehicles on offer to the New Zealand motorist.
MG has changed hands more times than a cold virus, but the MG I remember was when it was owned by British Leyland, which owned a bunch of brands that filled New Zealand streets, all famed for shoddy workmanship, chronic rust, and reliability so terrible it spurred brilliant comedy. But I'm not just having a go at MG, because I used to own one. This one, in fact, that my dad and I restored, so I do have a soft spot for them, even though these cars were utterly temperamental. But like my once youthful good looks, that's a part of ancient history, because the now Chinese-owned MG is a very different animal.
This is MG's first all-electric offering, and yes, it's made in China, but so is every electronic device in your house, including all the cameras and audio stuff I'm using right now. Let's get the important questions out of the way first. How much does it cost, and how far does it go per charge? Well, put simply, with the Clean Car Rebate, this machine will set you back $41,365, and for that, you get 263 kilometres out of a charge. That makes it New Zealand's cheapest brand new electric car on offer today, and unsurprisingly, it is in very high demand.
The MG ZS electric vehicle is now the second best-selling new electric car in the country, behind the Tesla Model 3. And when you look at the standard features, it's not hard to see why. Heated front seats are standard. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, standard. Massive panoramic glass sunroof, standard. Push-button start, rear-view camera, 17-inch alloys, climate control, front and rear USB charging ports, and a 5-star safety rating, automatic braking, all of that is standard. Plus, at 359 litres, the boot is big enough to fit a body in, and with the seats folded down, there's 3 times that capacity. Cabin storage is plentiful, with a PSC rating of 13, including the 2 cup holders in the front. I mean, the list of standard features is so long that I'm starting to run out of this fancy exterior footage, so I'll stop talking and just drive the car instead.
Okay, so something to point out is that, yeah, it's noticeable that the cabin is sort of built to a budget. It's got this cool stitching effect, which MG calls leather effect, which basically means fake leather. It's plastic. And some of the cabinetry is a little bit floppy. You get the center console flops around a bit. The door, if you pull and push it, it's got that sort of floppiness to it. But I don't think those are deal breakers. One thing that is potentially a safety concern is that I can't for the life of me see, you can see it, but I can't, what the cruise control knob says. It's got in, out, button, twist, left, counterclockwise and clockwise, but I can't really see what it says. Yeah, so I'm just going to leave that for the time being. One question I want to address before we get into the road test is what happens to the batteries once this car has passed its use-by date? Well, 2 types of people ask that question. The first group are people who really care about the environment and the effects of mining. And they want to make sure that the battery is completely stripped, brought back to its base minerals and repurposed somewhere and somehow. MG. The second group of people don't actually give a toss about the environment. They don't really like electric cars, they drive gas cars, but they use this argument as a aha, gotcha, against electric cars. Well, the answer is going to make you either happy or sad depending on what side of the fence you're on. The fact is, MG has entered in a partnership with a group of companies to make sure that when this battery does die, it's either going to be repurposed or completely stripped down and remanufactured back into new minerals, new cars, new whatever.
In the city, the car feels as comfortable as most new SUVs, but you can't get a real feel for comfort by city roads alone, so I headed north.
After driving this thing around Auckland for a little while, I think it's safe to say that I've got a feel for it. It drives like a new car because basically it is a new car. The center of gravity is low, even though it's a taller vehicle, which means that it's got sort of like a sedan feel rather than an SUV feel. It doesn't have what my dad calls the Land Cruiser lurch, which is commonplace in Land Cruisers and other tall SUVs, that it has a lot of lateral wobble. It gives your kidneys a workout after the end of a long journey, where this one doesn't have it. It really feels like a sedan, and that's because, as you probably know, most electric cars all have their batteries underneath the floor pan, which gives it a real low center of gravity and a kind of sure-footedness. It doesn't feel as cheap as it is. I'm kind of struggling to find fault with it. There's a few issues I'll show you very soon, but right now, as a car for the general populace, It's ticking a lot of boxes. But the only real way to know how good it is to take it on a longer journey. So with 170 kilometers of range showing, I'm heading an hour and 15 minutes north out into the country, where I want to test its charging capability, and also I want to go and get something to eat while we're driving on the motorway. I want to tell you about some of the features this car comes with as standard. For example, it has lane departure warning, so if you start to venture a little bit outside your lane, it'll tell you. Also, it has adaptive cruise control, again, as standard, so that you can set the cruise control once and it'll keep pace with the car in front of you, so you don't have to keep accelerating and decelerating. Honestly, that is an energy saver. It also has, as I mentioned, a 5-star safety rating, and it's got some built-in features as well, like Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Again, standard across the entire model range. Not only that, it has 3 modes of regenerative braking, or as it calls it, KERS, Kinetic Energy Recovery System or something, which is basically just putting energy back into the battery as you're decelerating. And you've got 3 different modes, which are weak, not really noticeable, and mild, to be honest. But it also has 3 power modes. Eco mode, obviously, to maximize range. Normal mode, which is standard when you turn the car on. And sports mode, which it doesn't really seem to adjust the suspension at all. It just seems to change the oomph, the accelerator response when you put your foot down.
This car also has a lane keeping function, so it'll stay in the lane by itself, but it's a little jittery, not as smooth as a Tesla's system, and you've got to keep your hands, for obvious reasons, on the wheel the whole time, which defeats the purpose.
One thing I can't quite get my head around, though, is the claimed economy. According to the MG literature, this thing consumes 18.6 kilowatt hours, or units, of electricity per 100 kilometers. Now that's better than the carbon fiber BMW i3. It's also better than the Chevrolet Bolt, or Holden Bolt as it was supposed to be called when they were rolling it out here. They were supposed to roll that car out here 3 years ago. We still don't have it. Holden, or General Motors, as usual, has dropped the ball. But what I don't understand is this thing gets better economy than the General Motors Chevy Bolt, but it weighs 80 kilograms less. How? I mean, it doesn't feel too floppy. How have they got that much economy out of a car that looks like this? It's sort of block-shaped. I don't understand.
To be fair, there's a lot of things I don't really understand, like tennis or why people wear skin-coloured leggings, but one thing I did understand was cabin noise on New Zealand's coarse chip roads at 100 k's an hour, so I tried to find a space where I could get up to speed. But roadworks and traffic had other ideas.
It's been roadworks and traffic ever since I left Auckland. But you already knew that if you live anywhere near Auckland. One day, I dream that I will live long enough to see the day where roadworks are finished.
Obviously that's never going to happen, but I did finally find something to complain about with the MG.
Okay, I do have one minor complaint that I've found after being in the car for an hour and a half now, is that the armrest on the side is, soft at first touch, but it's actually just this tiny little thin soft layer of dollar store foam, and underneath it's a hard plastic shell, so after a while it does actually hurt your elbow when you've got your elbow balanced on there and you're holding the steering wheel. Of course, that problem would be solved if I did 10 to 2 everywhere, but no one does.
Eventually the road cleared and I could finally get up to 100 k's an hour.
And there we go, it is about 85 decibels.
Eventually I arrived in Kaiwaka, a town famous for being Kaiwaka, in which I found the newly installed hyper-rapid chargers and a Gal petrol station, so I pulled in for a charge.
How does this work? Oh, here we go. Okay, push it in and it lifts up. Now I've seen Robert Llewellyn from Fully Charged attempt this, and he made it look really undignified. He got on his hands and knees to do this because this is a really awkward position. I'm determined to prove that you can recharge this car with dignity, or at least I'm going to die trying. Okay, let me get this thing swapped.
Using these ChargeNet chargers is as easy as creating an account online, getting a key fob like this fancy MG one, and plugging in your car.
Now it uses CCS, which is this one. Can I do this without getting on my hands and knees? Oh God, Okay, it's got rubber grommets. This is all unscripted. Oh, can't get it in the hole. It's like being 17 again. Okay, it's in.
This model, with its awkward pop-up grille, will be sold in New Zealand for the foreseeable future, with later models having a horizontally opening flap instead. And while we're talking negatives, let me explain this car's other cons.
Alright, now, it's charging. It's the middle of summer, so one thing I really need to find out is if the air conditioning works while it's charging. Oh yes, 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 yes! Thank God for that. Okay, this gives me comfort to dive into a couple of other negatives about this car. So, okay, first of all, there's the charging speed. It charges at 55 kilowatts, approximately. Now, 10 years ago, that was amazing, but now it's not. These two chargers in front of me, these are hyper rapid chargers. These are the first two hyper rapid chargers installed in Northland, and they can deliver 300 kilowatts of power each. That's a staggering amount of power. This shows maybe a bit of cost cutting, the fact that it can only recharge at 55 kilowatts, which means you're going to be looking at about 45 minutes from empty to 80% full, and that might not be a deal breaker for you or for me, but all these people filling up behind me at the gas station, I think it'll be a hard sell. Why can it only take 55 kilowatts of power when the battery is liquid cooled? You'd think, unlike a Nissan Leaf battery where you can't fast or rapid charge those too often during the day because they just get too hot if you're in a hot climate. With this one, it's liquid cooled. I don't see any reason why the charging is limited to 55 kilowatts. Perhaps newer models will have faster charging. Maybe an update will fix that problem. Maybe it's just to cut costs on hardware. I don't know. There are other negatives as well. This car doesn't have a preheat option, so you can't use your phone or a timer or whatever to set the car in the middle of winter to warm up the cabin for you. Another thing it doesn't have is a charging timer, so you can't say plug it in, go inside, make dinner, and then when you've stopped using the air conditioning and the heaters and all that stuff for the night, then you can set it to charge at 10 o'clock at night, for example, if you have a reason to do that. Thing is, it has a bucket load of positives as well, like a plethora. I can't get my head around how many stock standard features you get in this car. Stock standard, not optional extras. So many I've actually had to write them down, so I'm just going to read them out. With MG Pilot, you get adaptive cruise control, forward collision warning, automatic emergency braking, lane departure warning, traffic jam assist, intelligent cruise assist, blind spot detection, rear cross traffic alert, intelligent headlamp control, speed assistance system, and pedestrian alert. Man, that's all just in the MG Pilot thing. I mean, you also get a throbbing 8 inches of touchscreen. You get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, again, as standard. A 6-speaker surround sound system, which sounds okay, as in my book. I just can't get over the amount of positives this car has, stock standard, for that price, $41,000. You can't get a bone stock standard Volkswagen Golf for that price. Even the cheapest Toyota Prius, which still burns gas and has spark plugs and pulleys and belts and coolant and all that stuff, that's almost $8,000 more. And Toyota's warranty is 5 years, the pinnacle of reliability. Toyota, warranty is 5 years. This car has a warranty of 7 years, and that includes the battery. Man, they obviously have faith in their product. You know, of course, I'd rather have a Tesla Model 3 Performance with its neck-snapping acceleration and twice the range and its amazing features and self-driving capability and all that, but let's be honest, that's more than twice the price of this car.
Before I get too carried away, now is a good time to point out that there are dozens of electric vehicles on sale in New Zealand right now, and you can find all their prices and specs at ecotricity.co.nz in the EV Buyer's Guide. By using the price and range slider bars, you're certain to find an electric vehicle in your price range or with your desired range. It's also worth pointing out that this journey used Ecotricity's completely renewable electricity, being New Zealand's only certified carbon zero electricity provider. Ecotricity's pricing is very competitive, and when driving for just a few cents per mile with their 100% renewable electricity, like I am, you can afford to feel good knowing you're doing your bit for future generations. As for some final MG ZS EV info, you can charge this car at your house with a full charge costing around $11. This car comes with a trickle charger designed to plug into a regular outlet, but charging that way from empty takes about 30 hours. So if you drive a lot, I'd recommend having a 7 kilowatt home charger installed, which would recharge your MG in about 7 hours at a cost of around $4,000 installed. As for insurance, you can expect to pay in the ballpark of around $105 per month. But now, back to the car, a meal, and a verdict.
Now, this is the part where I'm supposed to give some sort of summary. But it's really hard to be impartial when there are more pros than there are cons. Yes, the car does have some big downsides. It charges at a high power charger at only 55 kilowatts. That makes long distance traveling really difficult. Yeah, it doesn't have a battery or a cabin preheat function. You can't set a timer to charge your batteries. But again, that function's kind of like the fly in boxer shorts. You know, we've all got it, but no one ever uses it. So those wouldn't be deal breakers for me, but I can understand many consumers would see that and say, no way. And the thing is, at this point, I should probably be completely honest, lay all my cards out, you know? Okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna say the truth. The fact is I'm part Dutch. That makes me genetically predisposed to be an absolute tightwad. And this car really does tick all the boxes. All is forgiven, MG. All is forgiven. All those nights I spent scraping skin off knuckles working on my old MG, broken down on the side of Auckland motorway in rush hour. I take it all back because this new MG is pretty impressive. Oh MG, you're not in Guatemala anymore.